Hello! So today I'm going to be talking about everything that I read in February. And February was kind of a weird reading month for me. I finished one fantasy book, and it was YA. And I finished a couple nonfiction and then a lot of manga. So just to make this a little bit easier and a little more organized, I'm going to talk about all of the books I read first and then talk about all of the manga I read next. So the one fantasy book I did read was The Rise of Kyoshi by F.C. Yee. This is the origin story of the Avatar Kyoshi from the Avatar The Last Airbender series. I loved that TV series. I only watched it recently, like in college, so a couple of years ago. I didn't grow up with it, unfortunately, even though my cousins did watch it when we were growing up, and I thought they were silly for watching cartoons. And then so many years later, I finally figured out that I was terribly wrong. So now I'm an Avatar fan, of course, and I wanted to read this book because anything with Avatar I'm going to want to read. Unfortunately, I didn't really like this book very much. I loved being in the world again. I love that world so much, but I think it was just written a little bit too young for me. The dialogue was really silly. Even just the sentence construction in general was really weird. It wasn't written very well. But also the plot was silly and it was just a little bit too juvenile. The tone was really weird. So there were some like really aggressive character deaths and things, but they didn't really hit home because it felt like the rest of the book was too light and it was kind of like a weird shift, so it didn't really impact me when I know it should have. And none of the characters were really fully developed. I felt their feelings didn't really come through. It just kind of boiled their personality to one characteristic, and I couldn't really see the motivations for their actions. I think considering Avatar was like a Nickelodeon show meant for kids, it kind of makes sense. It sort of follows that really young kind of slapstick comedy sort of element that was in the show, so that's in the book as well. I think I just probably wasn't the right age group for this or the right demographic for this book. I can see a lot of younger kids really enjoying it, but as an adult who is also a fan of the Avatar world, it was a little bit disappointing for me. I have yet to try any of the graphic novels that are in the Avatar world, but I might give those a try. I'm really curious how I will do with those after my experience with this book. And then I read a nonfiction book called Decisive: How to Make Better Choices in Life and Work by Chip and Dan Heath. And this is basically a guide for developing a process to make the best decisions. Basically, the whole book can be described by the acronym WRAP, which is to widen your options, reality check your assumptions, attain distance before deciding, and prepare to be wrong. There is a PDF summary of this book, and honestly, I would say that's all you really need. A lot of this book was anecdotes and examples and real life examples of people who use different aspects of this decision-making process. So if that's something you're interested in and you're seeing how it applies to the real world, I would go ahead and read this book. But otherwise, if you just want like the bullet points and the main topic of the book, just reading the PDF is honestly all that you need. While it is interesting to see some of the cases where this sort of methodology was put into practice, it's not really that necessary in my opinion. I also feel like I didn't really remember anything from this book. I have like a huge decision that I have to make in my life right now, and reading this book at the beginning of the month has honestly not impacted how my decision-making process is going so far, so maybe I have to revisit it again. I don't know. I probably just didn't absorb it really well, but I didn't really find that it was super memorable. I think it had some good reminders, but also it wasn't really anything groundbreaking either. It's stuff that you already learned to, when you're making good decisions in life, it's stuff that you've already figured out you need to do. So I don't think it was really an influential book for me, but if you are more interested in the topic of decision making and seeing how it applies to other people, you can go ahead and read this book. It's not that long, I think. It was maybe 6 hours on audiobook, but I can't remember. The second nonfiction book that I read did have more of a lasting impact on me, and I enjoyed it much more, and that was The Little Book of Hygge by Meik Viking. This is about the Danish concept of coziness, sort of, but also like it's the feeling of sitting down in a cozy blanket, reading a book and drinking tea while there's a storm outside, or sitting down with your family and enjoying just like living in the moment. It's like coziness, but also like human interactions and also having like an escape from all of the troubles of the regular world. It doesn't really translate fully well into English, but it's like the next level of coziness, which is basically what I want to try and achieve every day of my life. It goes over the concept of hygge, what it is, and how you can try to achieve it more often. And it also has different recipes for hyggely foods and recommendations of places to go in Copenhagen that give you a hygge atmosphere, and a lot of activities that you could also do with your friends and family. I would be interested in looking through it physically because I did read it on audiobook, and I think there are some pictures and illustrations in the book that would help visualize some things a bit more, because they were like talking about different lamp designs, which I had to look up because I had no idea what these lamps look like and how light can affect hygge and everything. So it was really, really interesting to me. It's a pretty new concept to me. I don't really have any experience in it, and so getting to learn more about it and see it through the eyes of this author who is Danish and also a happiness researcher and how hygge relates to happiness, it was really, really interesting, and I really enjoyed this book. I would be interested in finding out more about this topic, so I know there are quite a few books on hygge that I saw just from my library, so if you have any recommendations, please let me know, because I would love to try and achieve hygge every day of my life. And amazingly, those are all of the books that I read in February, and everything else is manga. I have been on a huge manga binge. I became obsessed with Chihaya Furu in the last month, and it's made me just want to read all of the manga. So that's kind of what I did. I started out on the Crunchyroll app, but the selection on the Crunchyroll app is not the greatest. I found the one manga that I absolutely loved last month, which was Lofty Flower Fall for Me. If you want my thoughts on that, my review on that, it's in my last month's wrap up. But after that, I haven't really had much success in the Crunchyroll app, unfortunately. I did read everything that was available of YanOta, Delinquent Boy, and Otaku Girl by Hoshimi Yumi. Even though I did finish what is uploaded of the series, I don't recommend it really. It's a age gap romance sort of, but not really romance at this point. It is very innocent, but the girl is a grown woman and the boy is a middle schooler? Elementary schooler? I can't remember. No, I think he's an elementary schooler, so very, very young. Nothing bad really has happened, but it's pretty uncomfortable. And I don't really know why I read the whole thing. If that sounds interesting to you, go ahead, but it's not really something that I would recommend everyone reads. So I think I read 7 volumes of that, but I don't think I will be continuing in the series just because it's not really something that I am super drawn to reading in the first place, and I just read it because it was there. I also tried a volume of Crossing Time by Yoshimi Sato, and this is a collection of short stories, sort of, at different railroad crossings, and all of these different characters and what happens when they're at these crossings waiting for a train to pass. The concept was interesting, but I didn't really find I was connecting to the characters really well. I didn't really care for any of the various storylines that were happening, so I decided to just drop it after 1 volume. It's a very slow slice of life, as you would expect from something that's based on things that happen at railroad crossings, but it is a seinen, so there was some sexualization of the characters that I just found a little bit distasteful and didn't really make me want to continue in the series because I wasn't really feeling strongly about it anyway. So I dropped that after 1 volume, and the next manga I picked up I actually dropped after 2 chapters, and that was Takahashi-san is Listening by Yu Hokuo. This is about a girl whose hobby is to eavesdrop on 2 of the boys in her class because they have ridiculous conversations. And again, I just wasn't really interested in it. I wasn't finding their conversations to be funny, and I don't really know what it's trying to go for with this girl who likes to eavesdrop. It was just kind of odd and not very interesting to me, so I dropped it after 2 chapters. And then I tried the Kawai Complex Guide to Manors and Hostile Behavior by Ruri Miyahara, and I read 2 volumes of this because I was slightly interested in it, but again, it just wasn't really keeping my attention for very long. It's about a boy who kind of attracts really weird people, and he goes to live in this sort of, it's like a big house that gets rented out to a lot of people. And so he lives with all of these very odd characters, and it's kind of interesting in the way that it's like a lot of different characters and you don't know what they're gonna do next because they're so weird. And there's a small little like romance subplot that isn't really going anywhere out of the 2 volumes. And honestly, the main reason I kept reading it was because of the little romance subplot, but it just wasn't really drawing enough to keep me reading after 2 volumes. There was some really questionable content in it as well, so I ended up just dropping it after 2 volumes. And that basically exhausted everything that was on the Crunchyroll app, so I then turned to my library and I checked out a bunch of different stuff, and I have a reading vlog where I read through all of that manga. So if you want more in-depth thoughts, you can check that, but I will just quickly go over them here as like a final wrap-up, because obviously that's what this is. This is a reading wrap-up. Anyway, I read 2 volumes of Idle Dreams by Arina Tanemura, and this is about a 31-year-old woman who feels like she got nowhere in life and she made a mistake, and she wants to go back to when she was 15 and start it all over again and live life more on the edge and take more risks. So she ends up meeting up with a boy from her high school who now works in pharmaceutical sciences and developed a pill to revert you to your 15-year-old body for 5 to 6 hours. So she takes this pill and then she ends up getting swept up by an idol agency and becoming an idol. The basis for this is supposed to be a magical girl series for adults, and it kind of has that vibe. It is very cheesy. It's very overdramatic and very ridiculous. You also start having some questionable content again with a 31-year-old person in a 15-year-old's body and starting to get into relationships with actual 15-year-olds, as well as also with the guy that she met up with from her high school and then the guy that she liked in high school. It's a mess. It's really honestly a mess. And if you like messy stories, it might be for you. If you like magical girl stories, or if you like stories around the idol industry, it might be for you, but it was just a little bit too much for me. So again, I decided to drop this series. I am interested in other things by Arina Tanemura. I know she's a very popular mangaka, but I haven't read anything by her. So if you have any suggestions for where to start or what your favorite work from her is, then I would love to know and give it a try. Oh my god, I'm an idiot. I forgot. I have the volumes. Why was I not holding these? Wow, okay, so this is volume 1 and volume 2. The art is really nice, I think. It looks like a classic shoujo art, but a little bit like older, like 90s style art. I don't know when this was published, actually. But it is pretty, but it's just so dramatic. I mean, you can't really expect anything else when you're talking about like a girl who turns back her body and then becomes an idol. So it makes sense. You get what you sign up for. And then I read 9 volumes of Love at 14 by Fuka Mizutani. There's a lot here. I'm not gonna carry it because that's ridiculous. Not that I remember I actually have them physically. Oh my god. Hopefully those don't fall, but we will find out very soon. So, Love at 14 by Fuka Mizutani. This is about 2 childhood friends who are going into middle school and going through puberty and discovering love. It's very adorable and innocent in the first couple volumes. I really enjoyed it. A lot of side characters and side couples get brought into this though, and there are various different pairings that I'm not quite sold on. Oh my gosh. I'm just gonna leave it, honestly. That whole shelf is gonna come down. Oh well. Yeah, so there's a bunch of different side stories in this and a bunch of different side couples in this. There's a student-teacher pairing, which makes me a bit uncomfortable considering the student is 14 years old and the teacher is 24 years old. There's also another boy with a adult woman on a bus. There's another student-teacher pairing with a girl student and a guy teacher, and there's a lot of different interactions happening, and I didn't really care for those side interactions as much. There was one couple that I really enjoyed, and that was between 2 third-year students, which is more my vibe. But other than that, I only really cared about the main couple, but I know a lot of people really like that messy storyline. That manga kid who reviewed the series and is the reason I picked this up really likes all of the side couples and doesn't like the main couple at all because he thinks they're boring. I disagree. I really like the main couple, but everyone's gonna have their different opinions. Overall, this is just a really sweet, fluffy little story, and if it seems at all interesting to you, I would definitely pick it up. I will say that the middle bit slogged a bit for me. The first couple volumes I really liked, and then the 9th volume I really liked. And then the middle ones I didn't really feel very strongly about. I was kind of indifferent because, again, it goes more into the side character stories, which I didn't care for as much. But if you want something just really sweet and cute, go ahead and try Love at 14. Next, I read volume 1 of Candy Color Paradox by Isaku Natsume, and this was adorable. I loved it so much. I was expecting to love it, and I did. This is about 2 journalists who end up being paired together even though they really don't like each other. And it's a hate to love, and it's so freaking cute. It has a nice balance of actual plot line with their job and what they're doing, and also like romantic tension. It is an explicit BL, but it's not all just straight normal BL stuff that you think of. It also has like a much sweeter plotline as well, which I really enjoyed. I really like seeing how these characters interact. They are so cute together, and I love their dynamic, and I'm very excited to continue on in the series. Unfortunately, this was the only volume that my library had, and I have since requested that they buy the next 3 volumes that I know are out. So hopefully I will be reading that soon as well. And then lastly, I read All My Darling Daughters by Fumi Yoshinaga. This is a 1-volume story. It's 5 different short stories, but they're all sort of interrelated with their characters. A lot of the same characters show up in the different stories. And it's a sort of slice of life character study about all of these different women and their interactions and their relationships with their parents, their mothers, or their friends. I am a complete stranger to Fumi Yoshinaga's works, so this is my first time trying her, and she has a very distinct art style, which I hear about a lot. It's also a much more mature storyline than I am used to reading. I mainly read high school shoujo, which is completely different from what this is. This is not at all that like really bubbly art, and it's not the really light-hearted storylines. This has a much deeper thread and a much more a much more distinct art style than shoujo does. Shoujo tends to be like super round, I think of like bubbly and stuff, but this is much more sharp edges. It was really interesting to read, and Fumi Yoshinaga has a very interesting way of telling stories, so I enjoyed my time reading it, but it wasn't my favorite work of manga that I've ever read. If you're looking for something a little bit more hard-hitting and not quite as fluffy as the normal shoujo that I read, then this would be a good option. But I'm also curious on what else Fumi Yoshinaga has written. I think there are quite a few that I have on my list to read, but I haven't gotten to them yet, so let me know what I should start with after this, or what your favorite one from her is. So that is everything that I read in February. It was very manga heavy, and I expect March to be manga heavy as well. I have a lot of holds coming in from the library, hopefully very soon, and I'm super excited to read them. I'm also really into audiobooks at the moment right now. I haven't really read anything physically that wasn't manga in a very long time. I'm not really mad at it. I'm glad that I'm actually reading, because I spent most of the end of last year not really reading anything. So the fact that I'm reading something at least is a good sign. I would love it if you gave me some of your manga recommendations, and I will see you later. Bye.